So I am a CFI. I actually joined the CFI ranks after presenting at Elite Training Day the first time because I honestly fell in love with the people and the organization and just the mission and the purpose and wanted to be better educated and be an official part of the community. So I am CFI. I'm also an executive communications and body language expert. So I really have the mission of helping people show up as their most confident, clued in self in any conversation and any interaction that they're having. So that's mission critical for me in this field.
That's excellent. So body language expert, I think there's a lot of probably misnomers as to what that actually means. How does that apply? And we'll get a little bit more specific to interview and interrogation, but how does that apply in general for what you're doing? What type of feedback are you providing?
Yeah, so really for me, the greatest gift of understanding body language, and for me, it was a critical skill I had to learn because I sucked at communication. My natural state is oblivious. When I'm off duty, I don't notice anything, and I really don't manage myself well either. So it was kind of a save me skill that I learned selfishly just because I needed so much help. And in doing so, I realized just the immense power that it held and the immense confidence that it gave me by understanding not only how to read or how to decode or how to pick up cues that other people were sending my direction, but also how could I manage myself more effectively and how could I increase my influence and how could I just do a better job of helping people feel really seen and heard and valued when they were interacting with me, because I really sucked at it.
When you say you sucked at it, which I have a very hard time believing, but what does that actually equate to?
Lack of awareness.
Okay.
I didn't realize how I was showing up. I was showing up very closed off, disinterested, self-absorbed sometimes just because I'm a very internal processor. So I get stuck in my own head a lot. And that really presents a lot of missed opportunities to connect with people. And then other people were giving me like everything but like setting off flares literally to try to clue me into what was going on around me, both in my business and in my personal relationships. And I was just oblivious. I missed a lot. I wasn't clued in and I didn't know there was a problem till the whole house was on fire. And so it came with some pretty expensive and painful consequences that I wasn't really interested in recreating.
Yeah.
So learning the skill set really has been a complete life game changer for me.
Wow. And so that sounds like a universal application that you can have for just being better at understanding not only your body language, but also others. But translating that into an interview or an interrogation, I can see, first off, it's not something, candidly, we really talk about that often, which we probably should talk about more. Body language more in this field, as you know, is more talked about probably towards like detecting truth or deception, which is what we're trying to get away from. So how do you think that body language can apply in the interviewing field away from that truth or deception conversation?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the self-awareness side and the self-management side of it. And part of it is setting your mindset. Because really once you know where you want to go in a conversation or an interaction, and you get the mindset of where you want it to go, or how, more importantly, how you want it to feel to the person on the other side of you, it kind of sets your internal GPS and your body language supports that outcome, right? So the way I use it and the opportunity I think it really has in this field is by being intentional and knowing what the goal of your interaction is. And that doesn't mean like in some cases confession or admission, right? But truth, that's where we always want to steer, right? Like part of what you need to do is set the intention to create an environment where the person feels safe enough with you and trusts you enough and feels like there's enough partnership where they're going to disclose the critical information that you need to have. And so much of that is, we do a great job of framing it up in the process of interview structure and the different techniques that we're trained to do, but also in the mechanics. How are we orchestrating and choreographing ourselves during the steps of that process? And how much more effective can we get to our desired outcome if we choreograph our conversations well? Right. So it's just having that awareness of where's the moment for me to create additional psychological safety with this person, or where can I show openness, or where can I show even interest, right? So many people feel ignored and just really not seen, even in an interview situation where maybe they'd like to disappear, right? By just acknowledging that person, acknowledging the value, letting them know that you're a partner in the process, even if the outcome isn't going to feel real great to them. The fact that you can honor them and respect them and be a partner in the process can really change the entire dynamic of how that goes and really how long it takes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of times we get stuck on this conversation of more of like the tactical side of doing an interview. What exactly are we going to say? When are we going to say it? What do we do if these things happen in this order or out of it? Not so much the big picture of what you're talking about, which is kind of humanizing that experience and really building that empathetic relationship with the person. A lot of that comes into how we're presenting ourselves. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to really excel and to really stand apart from just following a process versus engaging in a conversation. The process is important, and we learn it and we're trained on it and we know how to present it, but how we show up and perform that process can feel completely different, right? Nobody likes to feel transacted with, even if it's in an interview situation, right? I don't want to feel like you're doing something or checking boxes because you have to with me. Even if it doesn't feel great, I want to know that you're at least genuinely engaged in the process and that you're aware of the experience that I'm having and that you're creating for me.
Yeah.
Right. And part of that comes from raising a teenager, right? Like if you screw that up, they shut down. So being an engaged, intentional other side of that conversation can really impact what it feels like all the way around and ultimately how it ends up in many cases.
Yeah. So how do you take what we're talking about here? What are you going to be transitioning this into for your presentation in October?
Yeah, well, the Elite Training Day presentation is really going to focus on several key components. So it's going to be identifying really what your outcomes are, the goals for your interaction. And again, we're not talking about a confession, or we're not even necessarily talking about that getting to the truth phase. It's how do you want that interaction to look and feel? And what do you need to do? How do you need to show up to perform it in a way that aligns with those goals? Secondly, it's the question of who's on the other side of your face, right? You may have a case file, or you may have a rundown of what this person or this person X has been involved in, but who really is on the other side of your interaction, and what are their needs? What are their fears? How do they feel validated? How do they feel partnered with? And some of that comes from good legwork beforehand, and some of it comes from just what you're picking up, what you're cluing into throughout the early stages of your interaction and building rapport in your first moments with someone. So really kind of identifying those two goals, the goal of the interaction and the persona of the person on the other side of you, and then intermixing that with the existing process and framework to get towards the outcomes that you want. So it's just an enhancement to to the great process that we're already following as CFIs and interviewers, but it's just going kind of that emotional intelligence level just a little bit deeper, and honestly just taking more responsibility for how we're showing up as professionals in those situations.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a perfect application or a supplement really to what the other presenters are going to be speaking on also. Some of them a little bit more tactical from an interview side, but what you're saying, what I love is this is not directly applicable just to interviews. This is a universal concept that maybe people can use when they're bouncing around Nashville to have more successful interactions and relationships downtown as well.
Absolutely. Whatever the goal is, whatever the intention is, I want to get you there easier.
Yeah. Do you think, one thing that you mentioned before, do you think the preparing for the interview and actually learning a little bit about the person before you go in, do you think that has the reason it's successful, or partially because it makes the interviewer more confident of what they know and what they're expecting going in? So their body language and the way that they're presenting themselves is just more assertive or approachable. What do you think that is?
I think context is power. And I think the more context that we have, and again, you want to be very careful to challenge yourself on what is context and what is bias, right? Or what triggers your unconscious bias, because we don't want to bring that into an interview. But having context of somebody's past behaviors or somebody's past, how their personality shows up, or being able to even see somebody in living color through like their social media profiles or other snapshots that they've been captured in life, or talking to other people who know them, like all of that context that you have can help, again, better inform how you are going to show up and what role that you need to play for that person to get to the outcome that you're going to. So I will take more context over less any day. Knowledge is power. And I will never assume that I know what someone's going to do or how someone is going to show up in a room with me. But if I know possibilities, if I know contingencies to prepare for, I think as an interviewer, it just gives me more mental space to focus on the other elements of the interview and not have to worry about all of the unknowns.